Welcome to the Weekly Sports Guy podcast. I'm your host, Ashton Alcock, and today we're going to get into my NFC side of my NFL season predictions. That is this week-long's podcast. Continuing on, we're going to do the NFC East today and the NFC North. I know at the end of the last video, I did say the NFC West, I think, or South instead of the North. It's going to be the North, NFC East, NFC North. Tomorrow will be NFC South, NFC West. And then Friday will be my playoff predictions, award predictions, Super Bowl champion, and the draft order, what it should look like. If it all goes and somehow I magically predict the whole thing, but, we'll figure it out. So with the NFC East, we're going to start off with the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone likes to make the jokes because they always say every year is their year. But, they got a new coach in Brian Schottenheimer. And to go a little bit into that, I do think this is like the Gerard Mayo situation of last year, where their guy that they wanted is either not available, which to me is Bill Belichick. I think Bill could come to the NFL next year and take the Cowboys. I know he was a little interested in going there this year, same as the Jets he was interested in. Now I think Dallas, what they could do is say, like, hey, we wanted Vrabel, but Vrabel have to end up going to the Patriots. We wanted Ben Johnson, but he went to the Bears. Because they fired Mike McCarthy 2 days after Vrabel already announced to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. So they already fumbled the bag there. Ben Johnson's already interviewed at least 2 or 3 times already by then. And he's probably already deciding on a choice. So they end up having to hire Brian Schottenheimer, who hasn't been a hot candidate since his Jet days in the early 2010s, the late 2000s, and between 2008 and 2011. So it's like, what are you doing, Dallas? Is hiring this guy who's been around. I understand he's been around the league. He has tons of experience. He's worked with quarterbacks. He's an offensive coordinator, but your offense hasn't been good either. So it's like, let's hire the guy who hasn't been successful either. Where I understand that people are like, oh, well, he never called the plays. That was Mike McCarthy. But still, he had a big part in those game plans. He had a big role in what they're doing. They have Dak Prescott who's on a big contract. And then in free agency, they go out and they go trade for Joe Milton. Like, okay, you get a serviceable backup, but he wants to start. He's not going to start there unless Dak Prescott gets hurt. Then you also bring in Miles Sanders, who has been a free agency bust since he left Philly to go to Carolina. He hasn't done anything in Carolina. I don't think he's going to do anything here. I do like the Javonte Williams pickup. He's solid. They go out and get Paris Campbell. He's been okay in Indianapolis and then Philly. George Pickens, he's been solid, but he's a little bit of a head case to some people, especially when you talk about what happened in Pittsburgh. He whined a lot. But he also, part of him wasn't wrong. He was saying this offense has never changed. It's not going to change. We're always going to be bad. And realistically, he wasn't wrong. But it's also not right for him to say at the same time because, again, when you think about it, you go through it and you look at it and it's like, oh, well, you also are part of that. You're the one that catches the ball, but the other issue is the quarterback situation, which he also called out. So there's 2 sides of the story. Things George Pickens were saying was completely correct. They haven't had an offense since Big Ben, 2019. After 2019, Big Ben kind of fell off. He's been hurt. He should have retired after 2019, and he didn't even play in 2019. That was Mason Rudolph because he was out with an injury. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, George Pickens isn't wrong. He is a little bit of a head case. He doesn't get the ball. He does throw a tantrum, but he should be a solid wide receiver too in Dallas. They also go out and get Dante Fowler Jr., who's solid. Kenneth Murray Jr., they acquired Kaiir Elam, who's been kind of a bust from the Bills. Maybe a new change of scenery should be good for him. They also got Solomon Thomas, who's a solid D tackle. And they re-signed Osa Odigizua, I think is how you pronounce it. I could be completely wrong. Don't mind me. And then the draft, they go and reach at 12th. They go get Tyler Booker. Then I did like their 2nd and 3rd round picks in Siobhan Revel Jr. and Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. Getting 2 defenders there. Siobhan Revel should be a good pairmate with Trayvon Diggs if Trayvon Diggs can stay healthy. Tyler Booker at 12, though, was a reach. He should have been like early second round pick, but he ends up going right in the first round, top 12. Like the NFL says, there were cries of reach. It's thinking about it. Last year they took Tyler Gutton. They also have Tyler Smith. Granted, this whole offensive line is about to be Tyler's, and if your name is Tyler and you're an offensive lineman, most likely you'll end up in Dallas. I think it's kind of funny. The rest of the draft, Jaden Blue, he should be solid. Shamar James from Florida, the linebacker, should be good. I do like Cornelius, the tackle out of Oregon. He should be solid. And then after that, I don't really know much about the other 3 picks. I would say as an offseason as a whole, I'll give it a B. It's not the worst. I've seen way, way worse free agency classes, and I'm a Patriots fan. I've seen a lot of them. A lot of them haven't been my team. Last year, to be exact, is one I can go about, especially many years under Bill Belichick. Let's see. In their schedule, they play Philly in the kickoff game. They're losing to Philly. Then they have them beating the Giants at home, and then they go to Chicago week 3, and I have them beating Chicago. Then I have them losing to Green Bay, losing to the Jets, losing to the Panthers in Carolina, losing to Washington, losing to Denver, before getting a win on Monday Night Football against the Cardinals week 9. They go into the bye week. They come out. They lose to the Raiders. They lose to Philly. They lose to KC on Thanksgiving. They lose to the Lions on Thursday Night Football. They lose to Minnesota they beat Minnesota on Sunday Night Football. I want to make sure I said it right. Then they lose to the Chargers, lose to Commanders on Christmas Day, and then beat the Giants in New York. They go 5-12. This team to me is not going to be very competitive. They've have a very, very stacked schedule with like the Commanders twice. You have the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champs. I think the Panthers are going to be a little more competitive, especially at this point. I think they'll start picking up some pace, especially Carolina. I think they'll start like Carolina when we get to them tomorrow. I think they'll start off a little slow and then pick up the pace a little and start off again slow. And it's like one of those things. But realistically, it's not a great schedule, especially when you're a new head coach. A first-time head coach. Like, granted, he has Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator, someone who's been a head coach before. But again, his tenure wasn't also successful either. But we'll see from what's going on there. The next team is the New York Giants. This offseason, they re-signed Tommy DeVito. They brought in both quarterbacks, Jameis Winston to a 2-year, $8 million deal, and Russell Wilson to a 1-year, $10.5 million deal. They also re-signed Darius Slayton to a 3-year, $36 million deal, brought in Zach Pascal. And that's pretty much, other than Paul Oseen, Adebo, and Javon Holland, they pretty much brought in a bunch of like depth pieces. Solid free agency class, I would say. Nothing really stands out to me. And then in the draft, they go out and get Abdul Carter at 3. Then they go draft Jackson Dart. And then they get Cam Scatterbo in the 4th round, which I do like. I'll give overall their offseason a B. I don't really know much about their other picks, like Darius Alexander from Toledo, the D tackle they took in the 3rd round. It could be a solid piece. But realistically, their first year should be more not about winning games, more about developing. I feel like they could get away with the losing season as long as like Jackson Dart shows some potential, or an Abdul Carter and his defense looks a lot better than it did last year. If they somehow float and go 7-10, that's a winning season for them. Like, granted, yes, it's a losing season, but for them, who is a team that's in a rebuild, 7-10 is like going 10-7 for a competitive middle pack team. But for them, that's like, hey, we showed improvement. We won 3 games this year. We're winning 7 games. That's 4 more games we won to the next season. And Jackson Dart also looks good. You're like, oh, okay, this team is here. But to be honest, if you're a Giants fan, I'm sorry. I'm about to be a bearer of bad news, because you start the season off in Washington, you lose. You play in Dallas week 2, you lose. You play the Chiefs week 3, you lose. You lose to the Chargers. You lose to the Chiefs and Chargers in weeks 3 and 4 at home. Then you beat the Saints, because the Saints are going to be the worst team this year. You'll see tomorrow when I go over their record prediction. Then you lose to Philly in Philadelphia. You lose to San Fran. After the Saints, You lose the Thursday Night Football at home against the Eagles. You lose in Denver. You lose at Philly. You lose to the Niners. Then you lose to the Bears. You beat Green Bay in an upset. I actually have this one as an upset. You lose the next 2 games to Detroit and Patriots on Monday Night Football and New England, both on the road. Go into your bye week. Come out of your bye week. You lose to Washington. Upset the Vikings because now you're at the point in time where you're trying to play to beat teams. Then you lose to the Raiders and you lose to the Cowboys, going 3-14. This team on paper doesn't look like the greatest roster. You have 4 quarterbacks on your roster, which is never really an idea to have 4 quarterbacks, especially Tommy DeVito, who has no chance of starting. And then you're going to have to get rid of one of Jameis or Russell Wilson, and most likely Russell will get the starting job. Dart's the backup. Maybe keep Tommy DeVito at that point to be a third stringer, and you let Jameis walk, or you trade Jameis to a team like the New Orleans Saints who might need a quarterback. There's no point in paying $18 million for 2 quarterbacks. Technically, it'd be 14.5 for 2 quarterbacks, plus Jackson Dart's contract, so now add that to it. This team's going to go 3-14. It's not going to be the best team in the league. It's not going to be the worst. It's going to be one of the worst. But you go from there. And if Jackson Dart, just do what the Patriots did last year. You got a new quarterback. Let's see what he is. Obviously, Drake May showed that he can be the franchise quarterback. Now, Jackson Dart, we don't know yet, but maybe it's something like that. You start Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson starts to kind of slow down. He's not as good as he normally was. Let's throw Jackson Dart. Okay, it's week 8. We're 1-7. Okay, there's no expectation on this kid, but he goes out and wins 3 more games. Oh, look at that. Here, whoop-de-doo. Now we're 4-13 again. Oh, fine. I'll take it. At this point, I'll take it. But we'll see how the season goes. I have them 3-14. This schedule is not favorable at all. They have one of the harder schedules in the league, and especially a team that's in the middle of a rebuild. That's not good. Next is the Philadelphia Eagles, and going on top of the Eagles, the ban on the tush push did happen today, and it didn't get banned. They needed 24 votes. They got 22 out of 10. The Patriots, Ravens, Lions, Jaguars, Eagles were obviously a few teams to name that voted against banning it. Reason why they ended up having 10 votes. But I don't think they should ban it. Again, why ban something a team's good at? Play better defense. There's ways to do it. The ways to stop it, get your beefy guys, put them right in the center's face, and try to push the center backwards, which would push the quarterback backwards. And then next you know, Jalen Hurts is on the ground, or whoever quarterback's trying to tush push and whatever team is. Next you know, boom, there you go. Now looking to their free agency, they brought in DTR in a trade with the Browns in exchange for Kenny Pickett. They signed a 2-year extension with Saquon. A.J. Dillon they brought in for a year. Terrence Marshall Jr., he also signed a deal with the Eagles. They extended Lane Johnson's contract. They acquired Kenyon Green from the Texans in exchange for that C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They brought in Azeez Ojulari from the Giants. They brought in Josh Uche from the Chiefs. They re-signed Zach Bond. Brought in Adoree Jackson, and pretty much it's been a solid offseason for them. Brought in some pieces, keep the O-line as good as they possibly can. Next you know, you go into the draft. They go out and get Jahad Campbell, who I thought was going way before 31. What a steal. The second-round pick I was a little questionable about. Solid draft class overall. They get Ty Robinson, Mac McWilliams, Samael Mondon Jr., Drew Kendall from Boston College, the center Kyle McCord to be a solid backup. They got 2 tackles in the 6th round, and they brought in another edge, Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech. I'll give it overall an A- offseason. They pretty much did what they needed to do. Then, in week 1, they play the Cowboys. They win. They beat the Chiefs week 2 in Kansas City. Beat the Rams at home. Beat Tampa. No, they lose to Tampa. I have this as an upset. Then they beat Denver, beat the Giants and Vikings on the road. Come back to beat the Giants. Oh, wait, my fault. I had them losing to Minnesota, beating the Giants. Minnesota, I feel like, is going to start off strong and then finish off very slow. They go into their bad week 9. Then I had them beating Green Bay, losing to the Lions, beating Dallas, beating the Bears on Black Friday, beating the Chargers on Monday Night Football, beating the Raiders, beating the Commanders, beating Buffalo, and then I have them losing to the Commanders in Week 18. I think 13-4 is a good record for it, especially for a defending champion. Taking over where they left off from last year, and hopefully they can go on a Super Bowl run. But 13-4 is definitely the best record you could definitely ask for. And the final team in the NFC South is the Washington Commanders, led by one sec, I'm just getting to their phrase things, led by Jaden Daniels, and they go out and they sign Michael Gallup. They re-signed Noah Brown. They brought back KJ Osborne, and they acquired Deebo Samuel in a trade. They also acquired Laramie Tunzel, which is huge. Then they brought in a bunch of depth pieces on defense like Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, Eddie Goldman, Javon Kinlaw. Like, all this is just depth pieces. They brought back Bobby Wagner, Nick Ballore. They brought back. This kind of keeping the defense as strong as possible. This is what you do when you're already a good team. You just bring in depth. And that's the most important thing if you are a team, especially how good they were last year. And then in the draft, they go out and they get Josh Connolly Jr., another guy to protect Jane Daniels. Then they brought in Trey Amos, the corner out of Mississippi. Again, beef out that defense. They brought in Jalen Lane, a wide receiver, Virginia Tech. Brought in another defender and linebacker, Kane Bendrano from UCLA. And then brought in running back, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt from Arizona. Just kind of bring some depth pieces in. Overall, it's a B-plus offseason for me, in my opinion. This team is going to be good. Just basically bringing in depth so if someone gets hurt, you have another guy ready to go. And then when their season comes, you got the Giants week 1. You win. You beat Green Bay in Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. You beat the Raiders. You beat the Falcons. You beat the Chargers. You beat Chicago. You beat Dallas. Then week 8, you lose to Kansas City. Beat Seattle on Sunday Night Football. Lose to the Lions. Beat Miami in Madrid. Go into your bye week. Come out of your bye week. You beat Denver. You lose to the Vikings. Beat the Giants. Lose to Philly. And beat both the Cowboys and Eagles, going 12-5. Good season. Finish second. You most likely will make the playoffs, especially with a team. What's it called? Like the Commanders, where you already were the second seed, second team in your division last year. And now you go back, and now you're 12-5. You're gonna make the playoffs because I don't believe anyone else, unless some other two teams go 13-4. Unless like multiple teams go 13-4 and 12-5. You're not gonna really. You're most likely gonna make the playoffs because there's no chance that multiple teams go 12-5. Definitely in the same conference. So that is my NFC East. Let's go to their division standings. NFC East, the Eagles are in first place, winning the division at 13-4. Commanders at 12-5. Cowboys at 5-12, and the Giants at 3-14. Very much as a normal division for the NFC looks like. It's typically 2 top teams and 2 below teams. Now it's the Eagles Commanders. It used to be the Eagles Cowboys for many years. Then Giants took one of the spots sometimes. And the Commanders would also fight up there. Now it's going to look like it's going to be the Eagles Commanders. I just don't think Dallas is going to be good with it, especially with their new coach. Now let's go on to the NFC North. We're going to start off with the Chicago Bears. They have a very interesting offseason, firing their coach again as well. One sec, it's being a pain with me today. NFC North. I'm just trying to get their free agency. They go and they hired Ben Johnson as their head coach. Then they also bring in Devin Duvernay, Case Keenum to be a backup. They acquired Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, and they signed Drew Dahlman, bringing up a better offensive line. Granted, I didn't think the offensive line was their problem last year. I still think it's Caleb Williams standing in the pocket for too long. Then on defense, they they extended Kyle Gordon, brought in Grady Jarrett, Dio Dejimbo, I think is how you pronounce it. They brought in as well the edge rusher from Indianapolis. Kyle Gordon, he was a solid corner for them, but realistically, this team, to me, didn't do great this offseason. Then the draft, I thought they did terrible in, especially the way it started off as. Colston Loveland at 10 when Tyler Warren is there, to me, is obnoxiously a bad move, in my opinion. Not saying anything about Colston Loveland himself. I think the pick itself just doesn't make sense, especially when you also have Cole Kmet on your roster. And then you have Luther Burden III. Granted, your offense is not the problem. Your defense sucked last year. You're allowing teams like the New England Patriots, who are one of the worst teams, or 2-7 going into that game, and you let them win because your defense, couldn't stop our offense. Yes, you did get a pick off Drake May and got a couple of stops, but you're also letting our defense get to you, and you couldn't put up points against a really terrible defense because you know why? Your quarterback stood there. So then you go in the third round, you reach on a tackle from Boston College and Ozzie Trapillo. Again, another pick to me that didn't make any sense. Like, I understand getting the tackle, but the thing is, it's like they should have built more on the defense. You signed a lot of offensive players. You brought in a bunch of offensive linemen. I don't think tackle right now would have been the biggest move. Maybe next year, maybe let's go get that depth tackle piece in the third round. But this year, then you got Shamar Turner, the Texan A&M tackle, which I was fine with. Ruben Hippolyte II from Maryland, the linebacker, and cornerback Zaw Frazier. I thought they were like, okay, that's good. You're building up this defense. But again, you should have kept building up this defense. In the first round, you should have took Mikael Williams or Mike Green. Second round, took Will Johnson the third. Or why did I say the third? But Will Johnson, the corner, because he fell. And then the other second round picks, maybe take Mike Green because he fell, right? You took Mikael Williams. And then maybe in that last second round pick, you take a wide receiver like a Jalen Noel. Okay, then you're like, okay, that to me is like home run draft. You got 3 potential first round defenders. Then you go out and you go get a receiver that's most likely a second round pick. And then after that, you could pretty much throw picks around and say, oh, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or I want to do this. I'm giving their overall offseason a B-. I just don't think it's as good as people want to say it is. Going into this season, they start the season at home against Minnesota on Monday Night Football. I had them losing in Detroit, losing to Dallas, losing to the Raiders, going into their bye week. And then coming out of their bye week, I had them losing to Washington, beat the Saints, lose to Baltimore, lose to Cincy, beat the Giants, lose to the Vikings, beat Pittsburgh, lose to Philly, beat Green Bay, beat the Browns, lose to Green Bay, beat San Fran, and beat the Niners to go 7-10. And to be honest, you have a first-time head coach again. You have a first-time offense coordinator again. You know, I know this sounds like every time you had Trubisky and then you had Fields. Trubisky, you had a coach, fired him, brought in a new coach. 2 years later, you drafted the quarterback. Then you drafted Justin Fields, and then you fired the coach. You hired a new coach. 2 years later, you're drafting another quarterback. You know what happens this past year? Caleb Williams fired their coach. Now you got a new coach. 2 years, they'll be drafting a new quarterback. This is a trend that you see with the Chicago Bears. But you know what? If you really want to change it, who cares about going to the playoffs right this second? Let's get Caleb back on the right track. Let's get whatever you need to do to get all these people on the right track. Get this offense to be a move. Get this O-line to be blocking. Let's get this defense to be good. When you think of the Chicago Bears, you think of the 85 defense where it was lights out, shut out. They're hitting people. They're knocking people to the ground, shutting people out, smacking teams. Because you know why? Their defense was great. And if you're the Chicago Bears, you should worry more about getting your defense being set and getting your offense on groove. And next you know, maybe next year, you're fighting for a playoff spot. So 7-10 is the perfect spot for them. The next team is the Detroit Lions. To me, this is one of the best teams in the league. They brought back Tim Patrick, who actually did really well. Re-signed Dan Skipper. Brought in D lineman Levi Onwuzurike, the D lineman. They extended Derek Barnes. Brought in Avante Maggs, a speedy corner. They brought in DJ Reed. They signed in, I think it was a 3-year deal to replace Carlton Davis, who went to the Patriots a couple days before they actually signed him in real life. They brought in Rock Sin, and they also brought in Kirby Joseph. I think it was a solid free agency class. Um, in the draft, I thought they actually had a really bad draft for how good this team is. Tyleik Williams in the first round, the D tackle. He was like a day 2 pick. Then you got Tate Rutledge, which I thought was a solid pick. Isaac Tesla was a reach. Miles Frazier was fine. And then 6th, 7th round, I think their picks were fine. Ahmad Hassanin, I think it's from Boise State, the edge rusher, and Dan Jackson, the safety out of Georgia, and also wide receiver Dominic Lovett were solid picks. Overall, their drafts, I'll give them a C+, but their free agency, I'll give them a B, so overall it's a B-. Going into their schedule, week 1, they got the Packers, and I'm going to have them win that game. And then week 2 against the Bears, I have them winning that game. And then Cleveland winning that game. And then beating Cincy, winning that game. Going to Kansas City and winning that game. And then ultimately end up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. You go, 6-1 going into your bye week, which is solid. Come out of the bye week, you lose to Minnesota. Then you beat Washington. You beat Philly, beat the Giants, beat the Packers, beat the Cowboys. No, you lose to the Packers on Thanksgiving, beat the Cowboys, beat the Rams, beat Pittsburgh, beat Minnesota. And then the Chicago game, you lose just because you kind of like, I'm going to say my starters. So 13-4, division winner. Could be the number 1 seed again this year. And now going into it, next team we're going to be talking about is the Green Bay Packers. They were the ones to push for a, what's it called? I'm blanking for a second. Oh, there was a team that proposed the tush-push ban, and now it's going to be back because they lost 22-10 in the wild card round, and then eventually somehow, miraculously, the score of the tally of the votes was 22-10, which I think is actually quite ironic. But we'll go from there. They brought in Mecole Hardman on a 1-year deal. They brought in Isaiah Simmons after the draft. They signed Nate Haas to a 4-year deal, re-signed their kicker. Their free agency class wasn't great. And then the draft, they go get Matthew Golden, the first receiver they ever taken since like 2002. Then they brought in Anthony Belton, the tackle. Then they drafted Savion Williams, the wide receiver at TCU. And then after that, it's pretty much just a bunch of depth pieces. I'm giving their overall season a C+. I think they could have done a lot better. And then going into the season, I had them losing the first 2 weeks to Detroit and Washington, beating Cleveland, losing to the Cowboys, going to the week 5, being 1-3. Then out of it, they lose to Cincinnati. My fault. I looked at the wrong team while I was saying. Then I had them beating Arizona, beating Pittsburgh, losing to the Panthers, losing to Philly, losing to the Giants in an upset, beating Minnesota, beating Detroit on Thanksgiving. Let's see, I'm just trying to see. Beat the Bears, lose to the Broncos, beat the Bears again, beat the Ravens, and beat the Vikings, going 9-8. I think it's a good season. Again, you just need to see what you have in Jordan Love. He has had seasons where he looked really good, but he also has looked bad. Now let's see if we can get him a full healthy season and see where they go this year. 9-8 would still be a good team. This would be another division that's really top heavy, especially the NFC North, and this has been a very competitive division for the last few years. And going into the final team, the Minnesota Vikings, going back to their free agency, they re-signed Aaron Jones on a 2-year deal, brought in Jordan Mason in a trade, signed Rondale Moore. That was a good pickup. I do like him. They brought in Jonathan Allen, the former D tackle from Washington. He's really good. They got him on a 3-year deal. Brought in Javon Hargrave, extended Andrew Van Ginkel, brought back Brian Murphy, brought in Jeff Okudah, Isaiah Rodgers. They extended Harrison Smith for 1 more year. This team was great defensively last year. They're getting J.J. McCarthy, their 10th overall pick last year, back. So we can see what they're going to do. And then the draft, they drafted Donovan Jackson, the guard of Ohio State. Again, a reach. Their draft wasn't great either. Ty Felton, the wide receiver from Maryland, they brought in. I did like the Kobe King, the Penn State linebacker, in the 6th round. I do like him. Overall, I give the draft a C. I'll give it overall offseason a B minus. I think their free agency class is phenomenal. Bringing in like Will Freeze and Ryan Kelly to protect J.J. McCarthy. They just signed Justin Schoolay. And then going into their schedule, they got Bears week 1. They win. Then I had them losing to the Falcons, losing to Cincinnati, beating Pittsburgh, and beating Cleveland going to their bye. So they start off 3-2, which is pretty good. And I have them coming out beating the Eagles, beating the Chargers, beating the Lions, losing to Baltimore week 10, beat the Bears, beat the Packers. Then they get really cold after their wins over Seattle and the Commanders, where they lose to the Cowboys, lose to the Giants, lose to Detroit on Christmas, and lose to the Packers. But they finished 10-7, which should be enough to squeak into the playoffs, especially in the NFC, with the division like the NFC South, where it's not as strong, which we'll talk about tomorrow. And going over their division standings, the Lions go 13-4, win the division. Second is Minnesota 10-7. Green Bay going 9-8, and Chicago Bears going 7-10. These two divisions are quite different than each other. The NFC North feels what the AFC North used to be, where it's like every team was like pretty much a game or two behind each other. But I feel like this year's going to be a little different. That's all I got today. I'll see you guys tomorrow when we talk about the NFC South and the NFC West.